your book, your platforms, your success tonight. I'm Brooke Warner, and Howard, I'm actually going to go ahead and mute you for a minute. Sorry about that. You're going on mute. I'm just muting my colleague here, Howard, because we got a little bit of background noise going on, and I'll bring him back on in a little bit. So I'm Brooke Warner, founder of Warner Coaching and publisher of She Writes Press, and so I want to thank you all for being here tonight. And we are going to be talking about some interesting topics tonight, starting with the idea of connection. What does it mean to connect in today's new world? And all of this whole webinar that you guys are here to listen to tonight is about using publishing, using a book basically to build a fan base and to connect with your readership, to do social media. We're going to be talking about ebooks, so it all starts with connect, right? So how to build a fan base. Now, this is sort of, my content here tonight is very specifically geared toward this idea of how to use your content to connect with a fan base. Now, Howard and I are on the call tonight in the capacity of being advocates for self-publishing, and I'm going to get into that in a little while. But really, the idea of connecting, building a fan base, and all of this first part of the presentation can happen with any of your content, whether it's blogging, social media, etc. So how to build a fan base. We're going to start with figuring out who you are. This is obviously an important component of connecting with a fan base because there are lots of people out there doing what you're doing. No matter who you are, there are people who are similar to what you're doing. Many of you who are coming over particularly from the She Writes community, and or from WOW, which is where a lot of you are coming from, you're writing novels or memoirs. Some of you are writing prescriptive books. And so when we're talking about how to build a fan base, looking at who your competition is partly figuring out who has done what you've done and how are you doing it differently, or how are they doing what they're doing well. Knowing what you're up against, or knowing who you're up against. I really recommend and advise all of you to figure out your competition, and whether that is a prescriptive person, who is how-to content, or whether it's a well-known novelist. I look at the landscape out there in the world and have thought to myself, who are the other coaches who would be similar to me? Who is like Warner Coaching? Who are the self-publishing experts out there? Who are the other publishers who are out there? And I do follow them, and I look at their social media, and I figure out what are they doing? And I also partner with them. I brought Guy Kawasaki on here a couple of weeks ago because I want to know his content and I want to know what he's doing. And what he's doing is really different than what I'm doing. But obviously we overlap, in terms of who our fan base is and or, who people who are paying attention to what we're saying. Be consistent, and this is with your content. It's so important, all of you, whether you're going to blog once a week or 3 times a week or several times a month, you have to be consistent with your content. Oops, sorry about that. One moment. Looks like I just popped out of my webinar. There we go. Okay, so be consistent, and this is across all platforms. So if you're blogging, you need to figure out if you're going to blog once a week or several times a week, and then don't deviate from that. And which is why, for my own website, I only blog once a month, but I'm on social media a lot more often than that. Provide real value. Now, this one is an important one, obviously. A lot of people use their social media, their blogs, their, in whatever ways they're connecting with people to blog about personal stuff. I don't discourage that, but you always want to be thinking, for the reader, what are they going to get that's real value? And that could be, a powerful story. It could be just a really good piece of writing that you've done. But for the most part, you also want to be sharing things with them. And so a lot of memoirists, and novelists in particular ask me, how in the world can I start blogging in a way that makes sense? And so much of that has to do with issues, you know, figuring out what issues do you have to share with people and what, how can you deliver issue-specific kinds of things. And so when I say issues, it's like if you're writing a memoir, for instance, that is about travel, you know, you might be able to highlight something very specific about travel, like for instance, you know, how to travel as a woman alone in a particular country. I mean, that might not be your thing, but what that have basically that are newsworthy and or have some sort of interesting content. Not always, but you know, it's one of these things to kind of figure out how to provide real value. Common misconnections, trying to be all things to all people. I mean, this is one of the things that I see a lot in my work with clients, because people get frustrated by the idea that they get limited, you know, that people aren't seeing them for all of who they are. And when you're trying to connect with people and build a fan base, you can't be all things to all people. So, you know, really trying to figure out what is your issue-specific thing. You know, if you're writing a novel about and it takes place in the Cold War, for instance, you know, you could be blogging or posting about things that are era relevant. You know, if you're writing a memoir that's about food, then really specifically you should try to have some things on your blog and in your social media about food. You know, you want to build yourself up as an expert in your area, no matter what genre you're writing in. Alienating your fan base by talking about things that aren't relevant to them. And what I mean by this is also things that aren't relevant to who you profess yourself to be. You know, so figuring out who you are is really important. And I have worked with tons of people, you know, on social media, trying to get them to think about creating a fan page, you know, because a lot of people just sit in this place where they have their regular Facebook page and they're reluctant to build a fan page because they have so many friends and they are sort of promoting / talking about their writing on their regular Facebook page. And I'm always trying to get people to think about the idea of having a fan page and to start one if you haven't already, because what's going to happen over there is that people are really going to start following you because of your specific, the way that you write, you know, what you're following on social media, the things that are relevant to you and therefore relevant to them, and they start looking forward to following you. Now, this is on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and we're going to get into that in a second, you know, but it is really important that you start thinking about having a fan page and talking about things that are relevant to your content, who you are, and what you're doing. And then lastly, never being personal. So on my Facebook page, I rarely post things, but I do occasionally, and I think it's important. You know, I sometimes post about my son. I sometimes post a picture around Christmas. I did, you know, and I want people to know, you know, a little bit about my life. I think that if you disclose just a little bit here and there, it is going to make your readers feel like they have a deeper connection to you. Social media. All right, here we go. What should you do? Where to start? Many of you are social media experts, basically, so I will, you know, just go over this really quickly. You know, Tier 1, Facebook and Twitter, if you're not doing anything, do these things. Figure out a basic strategy that works. You know, for those of you who do not have a fan page, please get a fan page. Even if it's painful, it won't last very long. You know, lots of people I've talked to have been reluctant to get a fan page, but once they got it and sort of separated out their fans from their real, you know, quote unquote friends, it does make life easier. Twitter, you know, everybody, all of you know what Twitter is. If you're not on Twitter, you really need to be on Twitter. Tier 2 is kind of everything else. Google+, LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube. I mean, all of these things are really important depending on what you're doing and what your interests are. You know, so I have a YouTube channel at Warner Coaching. It was super effective for me when I did my book, you know, because I wrote my book in 6 months and I posted about that, and that was fun and it lasted for a little while. And so right now I'm not doing anything on YouTube, but I would start back up again if I had something, you know, sort of relevant that I could gain a following for something specific. And some of you who have educational stuff really should be using YouTube. LinkedIn, I think, is fantastic. The LinkedIn groups are great, but they're pretty adamant about not letting you promote yourself in conversation. So you've got to be careful about why you want to use it and what you're looking to use it for. So again, for those of us who have limited time and we're really trying to write, Facebook and Twitter is where it's at. How to attract fans, get specific. This is what I was saying in the previous slide about specificity and figuring out who you are. These broad posts that are like everyone is doing what you're doing, that is not really going to gain you a following because you are not carving out enough of a niche for yourself. And so all of you who are writing a book, your book is about something specific, and you need to start to sort of carve out what is the specificity, what do you have to deliver from your book. Even if it's a novel, it's really okay. Maybe you have sort of an Americana novel, for instance, and you could post images of that era. You really want to get creative, and I think Pinterest is actually a really cool sorry, there's the get specific thing. Pinterest is a really cool tool for novelists because I have a novelist, for instance, who is using Pinterest to create storyboards for his characters. And so he's basically, before his novel even comes out, he's building interest around his characters that don't even exist yet, building interest on Pinterest by posting images and things that that character likes. And, even that in and of itself is sort of a fun experiment. Figure out how to be a pill, something your reader needs. Now, that's not always easy for novelists and memoirists especially, but you can figure it out, and you want to figure out some sort of strategy. What is going to make readers come back to you and be excited about what you have to offer? How can you be something that a reader thinks to themselves, I really want to check her out. Deuce, D-O-O-C-E, for those of you who don't know about her, she has a major following, and she's a parenting blogger, and she's written memoirs. I mean, she really cracked the code on how to figure out how to be something that people needed, because it's not just that people love her writing. I mean, it is that, but she started becoming indispensable by, providing advice and getting really specific, and her fans started to rely on her for information about, just starting with parenting and then eventually broadening out into just things that she liked. How to grow. These are two obvious tips. Be generous is, well, I should say this one's obvious, be generous. The second one, not so obvious, ask for favors. Some of you may feel really uncomfortable asking for favors, but I think on social media, this is a big one. You need to be asking people who have a bigger following than you to post things on your behalf. And it's not necessarily to say, hey, follow this person, because I only do that for people I really admire. And I'm not sure that I would necessarily do that just as a favor, but what I will do as a favor is post someone's book link, post someone's blog post, something that someone else would like to have shared more widely. As long as they're not abusing that, then I certainly would be happy to do that and do. And then being generous, that's obvious, like especially on Twitter, retweeting, thanking people for retweeting you. There's a certain kind of etiquette that goes on in social media that you want to be aware of. All right, traditional publishing, is it an end goal? Clearly today Howard and I are here, and sorry that Howard is muted, but I am going to bring him on in a little while. We're having a little bit of noise issues here, but Howard is a Kindle expert and my partner in the Self-Publishing Summit that we're going to be doing here in June and talking about at the end of this webinar. And, I call myself an equal advocate for traditional publishing and self-publishing. And I come out of 13 years in the publishing industry, specifically 8 years as an executive editor at Seal Press, where I did mostly women's books, lots of memoir, some prescriptive. And, is it the end goal? One of the reasons that I left traditional publishing is because of the state of traditional publishing. What is going on in traditional publishing? Here we go. General lack of creativity, unwillingness to take risks, and trying to bet on sure things, which of course we know are not possible. And so one of the mentality in publishing is, let's get the next quote unquote big book. The problem is that nobody knows what the next big book is. And so even in publishing circles, they call this, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And that is actually not that encouraging when you're an author, which is why most authors don't know about this. You hear about it when you hear about people kind of talking about the inside state of publishing. And it is a little discouraging. It was discouraging for me as an editor, you know, not to mention as an author. And so it is very flattering and wonderful when you get a traditional publishing deal, but it doesn't end with the book deal. You know, there's a lot of impetus, or I should say rather responsibility on the part of the author to follow through and do their own publicity and essentially kick ass on their campaign. And there are many, many publishers who aren't going to do publicity campaigns for you. And so, you know, the issue then being, you know, even if you get a traditional publishing contract, what should you be doing, you know, to continue to build your fan base, to continue to connect with your readership, and to continue to grow essentially a readership so that you have people to sell to? Because I promise you that your traditional publisher has a lack of creativity. You know, there's only so much they can do. They have good access a lot of times through distribution and selling channels and things like that, but they're not often creative in their publicity campaigns. You know, again, this is something Howard and I feel that, you know, no matter what your publishing goal is, you need to be thinking about sales, marketing, publicity, and platform regardless. So the opportunities inherent in self-publishing: tap into a fan base that eludes traditional publishing, make yourself so desirable that traditional publishers don't even appeal to you anymore, and control. So, you know, these, and I should tack on money onto that. You know, I mean, obviously, some people are making a lot of money in publishing. One of the things that happened, you know, when Guy was on a few weeks ago, and I know some of you were on that call, you know, people were saying, well, Guy Kawasaki is Guy Kawasaki, you know, and he already had a fan base, and so, you know, obviously self-publishing worked for him. Yes, that's true, but there are opportunities in self-publishing, and what's hugely important is that all of you start to think about your platform now, you know, that all of you start to think about marketing and publicity strategies now. You know, so if you're working on a book, I really can't overstate the importance of building up this readership that is going to ultimately be your readership for your book, because if they don't exist when you publish, then you have no one to sell to. But if you build through using some of these strategies, they're going to be there to buy your book once you're done. So self-publishing, a viable business model. Now, clearly, I think it's a viable business model. Howard thinks it's a viable business model. You know, Howard is not a huge name person like Guy Kawasaki, but he has earned a lot of money off of his ebooks, which we're going to get to in a second, and which we're going to talk about a lot in the summit that we're doing in Berkeley, because, you know, I think Howard has 14 or 12 or 14 ebooks, and again, I'll bring him on in a moment to clarify for me. But you know, he's done really well and been able to have his Kindle books at the top, you know, bestseller lists. And my own book, What's Your Book, which I self-published, you know, albeit through She Writes Press, my hybrid publishing company. It has been a viable business model for me. You know, I've earned back my money, which was the goal of the enterprise in the first place. So what self-publishing is, it is a way to make money. You know, it certainly can be a way to make money if you do it the right way and you think about it strategically. It is and should be a rung on the ladder of your publishing career. It is and might be a doorway to traditional publishing for any of you who want to traditionally publish and are figuring out, like, how the hell can I bang down these, you know, incredibly high gates that are impossible to get over. You know, I am telling you right now that self-publishing, if you're getting no, rejection, but you know that you have a fantastic book, then I would highly recommend going the self-publishing route and, you know, like I said, doing a kick-ass job in your publicity and marketing, and then let the publishers come to you, because that is happening all over the place. And it is an entrepreneurial endeavor, you know, so you have to start to think of yourself as an entrepreneur. As an author, you are an entrepreneur. There's no way around it. This is not the era of, oh, I'm just going to write my book and then someone's going to give me a bunch of money and they're going to do all of it for me, and then I'm going to go and write my second book and then I'm going to become a bestseller. You know, that's not how it works. You absolutely are an entrepreneur, and no one is looking out for you in the way that you have to look out for yourself. So you might have a wonderful publishing relationship, but still, you know, you have to think of yourself as sort of a your own advocate. There's no way around that. What self-publishing is not, it is not a stigma. It is not a trend, and it is not a last resort. And I want to impress that upon all of you. Self-publishing, many of you know it's changing. Every single day it's changing. Every single day you hear of bigger name authors who are, basically deciding to self-publish. And so it's the real thing out there. It's just another option among many of how to get published. And almost everyone I talk to has the dream of traditional publishing, and coming out of traditional publishing, now I have mixed feelings about that. I don't think it necessarily should be the dream that everyone thinks it is, because I think people set themselves up for success. That said, I think it works for some people, and for those of you who are dead set on it, and who have confronted this issue of the no-no-nos, I think you should want to definitely be considering at least an ebook, which is a segue to how ebooks are changing the publishing climate. So, should you publish an ebook? Here's a few questions for you. Do you have content you're sitting on? Do you want to grow your fan base? Do you want to earn extra income? And finally, do you want to be published? And if you answered yes to 1, 2, 3, or all of those, then the answer is yes, you should publish an ebook. So an ebook is, all of you know what an ebook is, but whether you're uploading it on Smashwords or doing a Kindle exclusive or doing a Kindle single for that matter, which, has to be vetted, and so therefore for those of you who need a certain legitimacy, a Kindle single can be a really good option. You can do something through BookBaby. I mean, there are hundreds of options, but, by far the most important one that all of you need to be thinking about is Kindle, and Howard is a Kindle expert, and so he will support me on that 100%. What having a published ebook gives you, it gives you an author credit, by which I mean you get to say you're a published author, which is true, and you should wear that label proudly, whether you have published, traditionally published paperback books or an ebook, because an ebook is a publishing credit. It gives you credibility and legitimacy. It gives you the potential to make money and a way to continue to build your platform. And so this particular webinar is about platform book success. You absolutely can grow your platform with an ebook. Having a product is so important. It starts with one product, grows into 2 products, grows into 3 products. I can't impress upon you enough the value of publishing parts of your book as an ebook. And Howard and I are going to be teaching at the Self-Publishing Summit specifically how to publish a deconstructed book or a portion of a book. And not enough of you are thinking about the value of that. That you put, for instance, a chapter of your book and you turn it into a story or you turn it into an essay, and then you put that onto a Kindle with a cover and you charge $1.99 for it or $2.99 for it. What this does is people who like your book become your fans. And there's a whole process, that I'm not going to be able to get into today, but basically about enrolling people into your database in order to continue to sell to them. And in marketing circles, for those of you who are familiar with sort of how to sell, there's a thing called a funnel, and at the top of the funnel is all of your really cheap products and all of your free products. And any one of you who wants to have a published book needs to be thinking about their publishing funnel. And at the top of that funnel, as you think about what do you have to give that's free or low cost, an ebook is a no-brainer because they're inexpensive to produce. You can make a little bit of money off of them. Some people make a lot of money off of them. And it's just a no-brainer kind of product that all of you should have, no matter what kind of writer you are. Okay, your mindset is the key to your growth. Where to start? I'm going to give you guys just a little run through here. Do an inventory of your content. The whole point here, the mindset thing, is that for whatever reason, this idea of being a self-published author feels daunting to people. But really, it's not daunting, and it's really actually quite fun, and it's really quite amazing to have your book up on Amazon, whether it's an ebook or a print book. So I'm really trying to advocate for all of you to, at the bare minimum, consider having an ebook by the end of this summer, this year at the latest. Okay, so do an inventory of your content. Consider who you want to reach, understand who your fan base is. Again, that kind of goes back to the beginning. Who do you want to connect with? decide that it's okay to start small. You know, so many people are all or nothing. And having an ebook is not about all or nothing. You know, you can be in progress and you can create a really fantastic ebook that allows you to have a product that you're selling and getting out into the world and building your fan base while you continue to write that same book. You know, it's a pretty simple kind of idea that all of us should be taking advantage of. Figure out if you have something to offer that might be a pill for your readers. You know, so this is something that all of you have to brainstorm and think about. You know, some of you are going to be like, yes, I definitely do, and others of you won't, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be a pill. For those of you who are novelists and memoirists and you know you have this really beautifully conceived chapter that you would like to consider, like so many people think, oh, I should submit that to a literary journal. Okay, yes, that is one way to build your platform if it gets accepted, but I promise you that more people are going to read your book and you're going to earn money if you turn it into an ebook. And so I think that sort of the literary journals of the past are the ebooks of today, and we really need to be rethinking the way that we're putting content out into the world. How to grow. Set a goal for yourself to publish something this year. Like I said, I mean, there's no reason why anyone on this call couldn't have an ebook by the end of this year, because we're talking 10,000, 20,000 words. It's really not a lot to put into an ebook. Slap a cover on it. Yes, I think it should be beautiful, but still slap a cover on it, upload it to Kindle, direct publishing, and there you go. And you start, you know, building your readership and making money. Start seeing the value in being a published author. I mean, I know all of you do see the value in being a published author. Some of you are published authors, but start seeing the value in being a published author of an ebook, because it is valuable, and there are, you know, plenty of precedents out there of people who have amazing ebooks. One that I love personally that I would recommend right now is called The Getaway Car by Ann Patchett. Fantastic ebook. I think it's 20,000 words. I believe I bought it for $4.99. I read it in a single sitting, and I love that book. And so any of you who don't have it should download it right now. Value the power of having products. You know, again, so ebooks are your products, and you need to think of them like products. And as a published authorpreneur, you need to have products. And then, you know, again, embrace the word entrepreneur, or even better yet, embrace the word authorpreneur. So I'm going to unmute Howard for a moment to see if he has anything to say, because I'm going to start talking about our summit here in a minute, but I wanted to give an opportunity to have Howard weigh in and to take some questions. Howard, are you there? Let me see what's going on here.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
You
there
can
you
hear
are.
me now, right?
Yep.
Hello?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me back, and hello, everybody. So you're doing a great job, Brooke, and you know, I certainly agree. I can only restate the obvious here. You're doing such a great job. The thing that I'd like to add would be that there is an unprecedented opportunity in the world of publishing right now. This has never been possible before. 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, if you wanted to be a self-published author, then you would have had to spend a great deal of money to do that, and spend a lot of time in the process. But because the digital platform has changed so much, we're able to get books done fairly quickly, if that is a goal of yours, and also at a very reasonable cost. And Brooke was talking a lot about getting your books up on Amazon or other ebook platforms. Well, the great news is that you know, you can go right from a Word document to Amazon if you want to. I'm not sure I necessarily want to advise that, but if you wanted to, it could happen that quickly, and in 12 hours you could have your book up on Amazon. They even have software there to produce covers. And again, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily do that, but what I am saying is that this is possible. The world of publishing has speeded up so much because of this digital platform, that exciting opportunities exist for all of us. And a lot of traditional publishers are scratching their heads. They still don't know what to do. I was just speaking with a client last week. She's got 5 books with a publisher that are kids' books that she wrote a few years ago, and the publisher doesn't know how or doesn't want to put them up on Kindle, or put them into the Kindle format and put them up on Amazon. And this is a shame, because right now kids' books are red hot, is a red hot market on Amazon. Last year there was a 475% increase in sales in ebooks for kids, and this is only going to continue because um, uh, we have e-readers, we have iPads and Nooks, and of course the Kindles and the Kindle Fires, and we have smartphones and computers, and these digital devices can all read ebooks. So no matter where you are, no matter what kind of digital device you have, you're able to consume content. Consequently, there is a very, very strong need for what anybody's writing across these platforms. So this is a very, very exciting time to be an independent author. And also, I just want to mention that reiterate what Brooke said about having number one, you have to start someplace. So whether it's just a chapter or a whole book, get it up there and get it onto Amazon or other platforms, and then build on that. Because the more content you put up there, the more you're going to sell. I mean, if you have this fantasy that, oh, I'm going to write one book and I'm going to make $1 million, well, you know, the chances of doing that are slim and none. But if you have the idea that you have many books that are going to each help sell more books, then that is the golden way to go. That's going to produce for you. So I want to encourage you to think about getting started, and I want to encourage you to keep writing, whether it be small books or large books or Kindle singles, or just a chapter. Just keep writing.
Thanks, Howard. Definitely agree with that. And let's go ahead and take a couple questions. And you were going to field them, but I see that I can see them just as easily. And there's a couple that I really want to answer. So
okay, go for it.
if I could be so bold
Sure.
to. You asked here, Annie, once you e-publish, does that prevent us from seeking out a publisher for the same book in the future? And the answer is absolutely not. You know, it does not prevent you. It's really important that all of you know this. Publishers right now, you guys may have seen this in the media, are buying print rights. I mean, that is, first of all, it's crazy to me that this is even possible. And what this means is that they're allowing authors to keep the digital rights, and they're buying up print rights. So they're agreeing to be the print-only publishers of certain books. And so what this is showing is that as long as there's an appetite for your content, no publisher is going to turn down the opportunity to publish your work at a later point. And so this is why I think it's a great idea to publish stories, to publish essays, and there's nothing that prohibits you from publishing those things in a later format. And it's always been the case, and I was kind of making the comparison to literary journals. You know, it used to be the case that, and it still is to some extent, I shouldn't say used to be, because it's still valuable to get your work published in a literary journal, but it used to be that, you know, memoirists especially would try to get their work published in a literary journal, and then eventually they would publish their memoir. And so if you look on copyright pages of memoirs, often you will see something like, you know, chapter 1 was previously published in such and such a journal in another form. You know, and that is happening now with e-publishing, that basically, you know, you put out the book into the world, or you put out an essay or an ebook, and then, you know, that's all you have to do is on the copyright page of your eventual print book, you would just say, you know, portions of this book have been previously published in an e-format, and that's it. So thank you for that question. And then Dara, this is a great question. What if my issue is achieving personal evolution realization through creative process in writing? What kind of ongoing social media campaign should I create? I just wanted to take this as an example because every single one of you, no matter what you're doing, can do a social media campaign. And so Dara, like things off the bat that I think of for you is to do an inspiration campaign, you know, to do like 30-day challenge of giving advice in the creative process, you know, giving interactive exercises to your readers on Facebook. Try this, for instance. Another great thing to do would be to interview other people, you know, people in your field who are doing things that are similar to you or who are writers, you know, particularly if you're talking about creative process in writing, you know, you might interview other writers about their creative processes. And the great thing about interviews or, you know, even teaching your own classes is that you can take the audio excerpts and then you can excerpt bits of your content onto social media, which is something that I do all the time. You know, in fact, to let you guys know, I mean, I have excerpted my entire book into 140 characters, and basically, you know, so many of my tweets are just things that I wrote in my book. So, you know, another idea that Howard and I have, and we're going to, you know, again, be teaching about this at the Self-Publishing Summit and elsewhere, is how to repurpose your content. So it's a really important idea. And then the other thing is to review books. You know, any of you struggling to think about, well, what should I be doing? You know, one really cool thing to do, and it's another way to kind of be like, yes, I support my fellow writers, is to review books that are in your genre and books that you like. So that's something that I would recommend. Should we take maybe 2 more questions, Howard, and then?
Yep, let's do it.
Any that pop out at you that you want to?
You know, I'm not seeing the questions, unfortunately.
Oh, you're not. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So
if
someone has asked.
If you make me an organizer, I will.
Oh, that's okay. I'm only going to take a couple.
Okay.
Okay, so someone said here, Peter, based on what you said, should I split the novel in, for example, 3 installments? Good, like, okay, like part 1, part 2, part 3. I think that's a possibility. You know, you certainly could split your novel up, but I would recommend only doing part 1 in the beginning, and or even less than that. I mean, you need to do this in a strategic way. And Howard, I don't know if you have thoughts about this with regard to novels and memoirs, but I do think you want to start by just publishing 1 part and really focusing all of your attention on that. And then if it does really well and it's successful, then you would do part 2. But I wouldn't roll out like a plan for all 3 parts until you have real success with part 1. And then here, if you have, Sandra, if you want to put out a portion of a novel up as an ebook, do you create a cover? I mean, unless you're a cover designer, the answer is definitely no. I would absolutely recommend hiring cover designers, and Howard and I both know a lot of fantastic cover designers. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive. You know, lots of cover designers out in the world are charging upwards of, you know, $1,500 to $2,000. There's no way you need to spend that kind of money. But also cover designers vary a lot, and we're going to be giving out those kinds of resources to participants of the Self-Publishing Summit. But if those of you who, you know, really need help with cover design and you can't make it because you're in a different part of the country or whatever, please just contact me, and I'll try to put together a resource list.
I would like to add something to that cover is really, really important, whether you're selling a hard copy book or you're selling a chapter online. There's an old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, but in this particular case you can, and particularly online, people only have really 3 things to go by. They have the title, the cover, and the description, and maybe the reviews. So if your cover is not a professional cover, you're never even going to get looked at. So it's really, really important to get a good cover done. And as Brooke said, you know, it doesn't have to be $1,500 or $2,000 to get a cover done. It can be done for significantly less than that, and it's well worth the time and money to do so. I've known too many people who have had put up books with great ideas, great titles even, but terrible, terrible covers, and nobody will even touch them because they don't look professional enough. So you want to take the time and resources to get that done right.
Absolutely. And just because thank you all for your really great questions, actually.
Well, I have one more. I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. So my question is, so we're talking about all of these ideas about publishing, self-publishing, and traditional publishing. So how does this relate to the Self-Publishing Summit?
Oh, Howard, thank you for that question. I was trying to segue us along, and yes, we are wanting to share this information about the Self-Publishing Summit 2013, which Howard and I are doing in person in Berkeley, and we want to invite you. You know, I mean, even those of you who don't live nearby, I promise Berkeley is worth coming to. It's a beautiful, beautiful city that happens to be located right across from San Francisco, so you can make a trip of it. And I just want to give you all a sample of what we'll be covering. And I do also want to thank you all for your good questions. And for those of you who didn't get your questions answered, please do go ahead and bring these questions to Facebook, actually, because I will answer these questions on Facebook tonight if you can just transfer it over if you didn't feel like you got your questions answered, and you can find me at Warner Coaching. So here's a sample of what we're going to be covering at the Self-Publishing Summit. Okay, I mean, this is exciting stuff because Howard, I can tell you all that if I could have one publishing brain that I would want to be transferred into my brain, it would be Howard's, because the information that he has is so awesome, and coming out of traditional publishing, I'm super stoked about what he brings to the table that traditional publishers literally do not know. And so this kind of stuff, some of the stuff that he knows and some of what I know, we're bringing a really cool blend of traditional and self-publishing information to get you all to think about how to publish your books well. So 6 ways to profit with an unfinished book. Quadruple Amazon royalty payments, and this is for real. I mean, Howard really knows how to do this stuff. He's kind of cracked the code, which is very exciting. 5 key components to all successful books. You know, this is important. Howard was talking about the cover. That's one of them, but there's some other things, and we're going to be giving some really, really specifics here on what, you know, what you need to know. And then building a fan base and a mailing list. I mentioned this in my talk here, but this is hugely important. You know, if you guys don't have a mailing list or a way to capture names, then it's essentially a non-starter. You know, so why it's the most important marketing activity for every single author, you really, really need to know how to do this. The range of publishing options and what's best for you. You know, we're definitely going to be having a conversation about the whole weekend, 2 days of conversation about publishing. A few other little tidbits here: designing and formatting your book, how to make it look like it was created by a big house at a fraction of the cost. This is important. You know, I mean, the designing and formatting of your book is a big, big deal, and there's lots of things. You know, I write in my own book, you don't know what you don't know, and when it comes to publishing, that could not be, you know, is probably never more true. Advanced Kindle marketing strategies that ignite sales. Again, this is Howard's domain, and I promise you it's impressive stuff. I have been very impressed with the advice that I have taken from him to ignite sales on my own Kindle book. It's been very exciting. Kindle singles and why you want to have one. I mean, we covered this a little bit tonight, but you all need to have an ebook. Just, that's it. End of period, right? And then insider publicity secrets to get your story and your book into the hands of key editors and publishers. We're bringing Lorna Garano. She's a friend of mine and a local publicist who does work for local publishers and self-published authors, and she's awesome. Definitely knows her stuff, knows how to get, you know, she's done big campaigns, and we're very excited to be bringing her in for basically a guest speaking slot at the summit, and she is smart gal, so we're going to be covering a range of different things. And so much more. I love PowerPoint. So join us in Berkeley. You know, we want to let you know what the offer is tonight. So if those of you who are in the position to do so can come to Berkeley June 1st and 2nd. You know, these are 9 to 5, so 2 full days with Howard and I. And this is what the offer is, okay? Bring a friend for free, which first of all is really cool. Bring a friend, and you know you're going to save a lot of money, and because you're going to split it. You're getting $200 off of registration, free author photo from a professional photographer. So we're bringing in a professional photographer. He's going to set up a booth, you know, with like a background, and so you can get all dressed up. It's going to be very fun. You know, we'll come in our professional best, and you'll get an author photo that you can use on your website and for your social media and for that fan page that if those of you who don't have one need to have one. You're going to get a t-shirt. Howard's designing it. I'm excited about that. Possibility of being selected for a free book makeover at the show. And so this is an option that you can opt into. You know, if you have something and you're like, I don't know, and I'm not sure if my cover is good, and I don't know about my title, and I have questions about this and that, we're going to select one person to do a makeover, and we're basically going to do the makeover before the show, and then we're going to do kind of the before and after at the show. So we want to invite all of you to that. So the cost for this is what, $5.95, but right now we're still in the early bird special. So tomorrow is the last day, and you get $200 off, like we said here, save an additional $200. So it's $3.95. So basically, if you're coming with a friend, you're each spending under $200, which you know should entice some of you to come out to Berkeley and you know, spend the weekend and join us for $395 for the weekend. And Howard, do you want to add anything before I give the last of the offer?
Yeah, there's something I'd like to add. Many of my clients over the last few weeks knew that we were doing this, and they're asking, why should I do this if I have you as a consultant? And the reason really is that you're going to get the map of the territory. You're going to understand when you leave there on June 2nd, the end of the day on June 2nd, and you look back on what you've learned over those last 2 days, you're going to have very clear understanding of what it means to be a self-published author. And just as importantly, you're going to understand what it takes to be a successful self-published author. As Brooke had mentioned earlier, we both come to this summit bringing various experiences that complement each other. So you're going to get a lot of great marketing ideas. You're going to get a lot of great publishing and printing ideas, a lot of great formatting ideas, a lot of ideas to help build your platform and your fan base. And you're going to understand how this works from the inside out. So we're really excited about it, and that's why we've put together this amazing offer for you. When you think about it, for less than $200 a piece for the whole weekend, you're going to have an extraordinary learning experience, one that could alter the course of your writing career. So I want to encourage everyone on the webinar tonight to take advantage of this. And
Well, and there's one
wait,
more piece.
that's
This is
right.
just
That's right.
let's put this up, and then we're going to
Wait,
let
there's
you guys
still
go.
more.
Yeah, so just to register tonight, you get a free half-hour consult with Howard or a free partial manuscript assessment by me. And so this is just, for those of you who know you want to come, register for tonight, take advantage of the early bird, which ends tomorrow, get a free half-hour consultation with Howard, on lots of interesting knowledge that he has about, everything from digital publishing to Amazon-specific questions. And what I'm offering is a partial manuscript assessment, by which I mean I will read and review and give you extensive comments on the first 50 pages of your manuscript.
What would you normally charge for that?
I normally charge $100 for that. So that it's, again, it's just another incentive for any of you who are interested in that, who are getting serious about what you're doing with publishing. And you can register here at the Self-Publishing Summit 2013. And, Howard and I are really, really excited about this in-person event that we're doing. We partner well together. We have a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun event. So we welcome you. And we are going to cap it. So we want to make sure that everybody's going to get some individuated attention. And then someone asked, what's Howard's last name? It's Van S, V-A-N-E-S. And so you can check out his books on Amazon and check him out at letswritebooks.net. And then where can you find me on Facebook? You can find me at facebook.com/Warner Coaching. So please ask me whatever questions you have to ask. And
Brooke,
thank you.
before we go, could you put our URL for the summit in the chat box so people can just click on that?
Absolutely.
Or they can copy and paste it. It'll be a lot easier for people who want to register or see more. Yeah.
Yep.
Are there before we go, are there any more questions, or are we done with questions for now?
I think that's all the questions. So, thank you so much, everyone. And please don't hesitate to email us. I'm actually going to go ahead and type my email into here. If you want to email me directly, you can. And, yeah, we hope to see some of you at the summit. Thank you. Thanks, Howard.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, everybody. See you at the summit.
All right. Good night.
Good night.